I was in line this morning with my 6-year-old, and a grown man turned around and said to my 6-year-old, "My goodness, you sure are pretty." My 6-year-old is gorgeous, yes. But she is also very in tune and perceptive, and she's an introvert, so she grabbed my leg really tight. And I'm pretty chill. I'm in a 12-step program, so I'm less knee-jerk reactionary these days. I'm pretty chill. And then he repeated himself, "You sure are pretty. Look at those blue eyes." My daughter grabs me a little tighter. I give a little awkward, huh? And he's a boomer, God love him. And he said, "I guess your mom didn't teach you manners." And I let out an uncomfortable little, and the pause was long. It was long. And under his breath, he said, "Guess not." And I thought, we're gonna be here a while. I said very quietly, in a nice, firm, Jesus-loving way, posed it as a question because I know men's egos love that. And I said, if you assume that I didn't teach my 6-year-old daughter to say thank you to a grown, consenting man when he compliments her appearance, then you would be correct. And there was silence for 5 more minutes, and it was the longest silence of my life. And a grown man turned around and said, hello. I know everyone's fingers are on fire from responding to this video. I want to make a few things clear really fast. My daughters don't owe any grown adult a thank you for complimenting the way they look, especially if it makes them uncomfortable, which it did. My daughters aren't responsible for the way adults feel. I am not responsible for the way you feel and choose to show up on this godforsaken app and project your own insecurities and unresolved trauma onto strangers on the internet. Additionally, my favorite comment was someone who said, "It was just a compliment on the way she looks. It's not like he kissed her," which I would say to that, it never usually starts with just a kiss. In my 20s, I had a job and I had to report to a devil of a man, and I was always off around him. I just felt off. It started with him checking me out, and I told myself, just be kind, just be nice. I have to report to him. I can't say anything. I don't have a voice. That turned into some compliments. That turned into some comments that made me extremely uncomfortable. And you can follow what I'm saying to know what he pushed. Whatever your assumption is, it's probably right. And throughout that experience, I never thought I had a voice or I could say something because I'm a nice, Christian, Southern girl. Nice is different than kind. The kind thing to do is to teach our daughters and our children in this next generation that when you are uncomfortable with something, you listen to your body and you set a firm boundary with that, and you provide language around that, and you start that really, really young. And the people in this comment section who are emotionally charged by this story, y'all are the ones that need the boundaries the most because there's something unresolved inside of you. And I'm not responsible for making that trauma more comfortable for you. You're going to have to handle that yourself. And I'm so sorry that the adults failed you in your life. That's all. All right, I'll get back to laundry. How about that Olympics? It's pretty good, huh? Thank you.
When we're going to meet children for the first time, we might think, if I give this child love, that's just more love in their bucket. You know, we're just filling them up. And so if I'm hugging a child, it's just one more hug that this child is going to get. What we don't realize is that we're really grooming them for the wrong type of attachments. So if we've conditioned children to come running to every single person that comes up, we have to picture what that looks like when that adult that's coming in is not us. I know that I'm not there to traffic a child, but I don't know that about every other adult that's going to come into that space. And so as that child grows, if we don't continue moving them back toward their safe adult, whoever that is, their solid caregiver, if we don't keep moving them back to that, we're conditioning them to maybe one day take off with a person whose intention is to hurt them.
Nicole, thank you so much for accepting my little nomination to be on the gala committee. So I wanted to let you know that Todd's company will be chipping in to help with the gala. No, he's not actually there anymore. He's working kind of in big oil. Big oil? Well, listen, I think it's a bit of a misnomer because big oil only made $172 billion in profits in 2023. So it's kind of like, Is it that big? I think it sounds like a lot of money to us because we're in the nonprofit sector. We are doing this work because we love it. I always tell Todd he's into big oil now because he's always been so gassy. I want to kind of call you in there, Nicole, because I think in some ways you do love big oil because you, me, everyone, all of us taxpayers have helped to fund it, have helped to make it so big. Just in the last century, the oil and gas industries have enjoyed 470 billion in tax breaks and subsidies. I think that might be a bit of a reach to say that big oil is driving climate change. I take a bit of offense to that just because the climate is one of our biggest communities that we focus on in our mission. And so there's no way I would do something to harm the climate. I'm going to kind of turn this back to you to ask you, why do you maybe find it so triggering that Todd and big oil are going to be helping us on our gala? Anyway, something for you to mull over. Maybe in a guided meditation practice. I've got to get back to it though. Bye-bye.
Disrespectfully, stop using analogies. Stop saying that your house is on fire and your neighbor's house is on fire. Stop talking about gas masks. Stop talking about this. Stop talking about that. Like, stop using analogies and just say it clearly and plainly. You don't care about Palestine as long as you fear a Trump presidency. Just say it plainly and clearly. Stop using analogies because you are a coward and you are afraid to just say it plainly. Because you know it will be used against you. Because you know that Palestine is not dividing the left, it's defining the left. And not only are you not part of the left, the reason you don't want to say the words directly as they just came out of my mouth is because you are a coward who has been growing their platform using the Palestinian genocide for the past 10 months. You're a fucking grifter and a hack.
Part 2 of how leftist culture and Christian fundamentalism have a lot more in common than we want to admit. I'm a leftist and I grew up in Christian fundamentalism. I'm not telling you who to vote for. I'm not telling you that you can't critique Kamala Harris. We left off at shifting the goalposts. In Christian circles, nobody is ever satisfied. You grew up thinking that the goal is to be a good Christian person, be in the word, show up to church. In these cultures, you learn that that's not the only goal. Please be tithing 10%. When are you getting married? Will you work in the 4th grade Sunday school class? If you want to know God, start by reading the book of John. Oh, you're reading out of the NIV. We actually recommend the ESV. In order to actually know the story of Jesus, you have to start in Genesis. In leftist culture, we have this as well. One that I've talked about a lot is how we were asking people to not vote for Biden. We're asking people to take a risk and hope that it would influence the DNC to do what we want them to do. So most normal people were thinking that the goal is to get the DNC to change the candidate. People are excited, they feel empowered, they feel like they've been heard. Within a day, leftists are on this app yelling at people. They're bad leftists, they're deep into stand culture, they don't actually stand for the cause, they're actually liberal. The expectations change very quickly. Normal people, they are annoyed with us because they're just like, what am I supposed to be doing? Like, I do the things that you all tell me to do, but now it's not enough. Next, exclusive and presumptuous. In Christian fundamentalism, you're being told that you have found the truth. Everyone else in the world is wrong, and people who don't believe exactly like us are not going to heaven. I grew up thinking like, Baptist and Methodist, they just don't get it. They're not going to heaven like I am. Christianity as a whole is the idea that you know what other people need more than people know what they need for themselves. In leftist culture, we have a coastal elite issue. Leftists in big cities with more resources center themselves in most conversations. In a lot of cities, if you want to get involved in organizing or activism, you have to be committed to working with people who are bullies. People are intimidated and not wanting to be in those spaces for a reason. Even for me, I'm someone who's like educated and can even be a little extroverted. Going into those spaces gives me social anxiety. It's because of how presumptuous we are. Leftists are always 10 steps ahead on the trail. They have the map, they've read the books, they know where we need to go to get to our destination. They have all the right equipment, but behind them are a bunch of other progressives who don't even know if they can trust you to lead them. And what leftists do, instead of stopping on the trail and engaging with people, they huff and puff and roll their eyes. They're like, oh, they obviously don't want to get to the end of the trail. They speed walk forward, and then they get mad that the people that they want to follow them don't want to follow them. Instead of like being humble and stopping or slowing down your pace or asking people if they need a map, we're just so presumptuous that we would rather get to the destination alone than get to the destination with the people. Next, we have pessimistic. Everything that Christian fundamentalists do is in response to the assumption that the world is going to be bad or cause them to be bad. It's like the Christian kids whose parents won't let them go to prom because bad things can happen at prom. If they eventually cave and let their kid go, they're going to spend the entire evening thinking the absolute worst. These aren't safety concerns, these are sin concerns. Christian fundamentalists, they do not have any trust in themselves, their communities, the world. In leftist cultures, we're fueled by righteous anger, but we're skeptical of joy, and that makes us miserable to be around. Especially here, a lot of people generate so much hopelessness. Like after Trump I got on this app and people in the comments were like, well, we're screwed, there goes the election. These creators were almost like excited to generate so much hopelessness amongst their audience. I also think an issue is that we don't talk about grief enough within leftist circles. Some leftists can be agitated when people have joy and hope, and that is grief, but we don't call it that. We don't say what it actually is. I added this last one in, apocalyptic thinking. Christians are living for a day where Jesus comes back to earth, but in order for the rapture to happen, there needs to be war, suffering, chaos. They spend their lives preparing for the rapture, and what it does is it takes them out of the present. They don't care for the widow, the women, the orphans, the children. The least of these are completely forgotten because they aren't living for right now. A lot of leftists think that there will be a big event where something bad happens and people are finally sick of it and they rise up and things change for the better. In order for there to be this revolution that they're wanting, something bad has to happen and people have to suffer. They believe that the only way to have a better future is to tear it all down and start again. Leftists are willing to sacrifice the least of these so that they can have their big revolution. They also don't do any of the work that prepping for a revolution would require.
You told me to create the reporting doc exactly like this.
I don't think you heard me clearly, and also if you were more proactive, this really wouldn't be an issue.
I was just bringing this to your attention.
Were you though? Or were you accusing me of being a bad manager? Maybe this is a you problem.
So you need it in the same format by end of week?
Yes and no. I mean, it should be in the same format, but use your initiative, and end of week does sound good, but it could be sooner.
You did tell me to come with a solution, and I
Was
shared...
that really a solution, though? I mean, the way that we've been doing it works fine, and honestly, we're just going to stick with that.
I tried a new way to create the
Was
doc.
that necessary, though? The way I showed you is the most efficient. You don't get to where I am by reinventing the wheel. I just closed the biggest client. Maybe you should listen more.
Petri dish issues that are just rife for everyone to be distracted. Critical race theory, drag queens story hours at the school, these things that it's like the people who support them, you can get them just as angry as the people who don't support them. And then all of a sudden everyone's talking about that, and no one's talking about the fact that BlackRock is buying up every single family house in every single city.
Exactly.
And turning them into investment properties where they're going to hike the rent up progressively to pay back their investment 200-fold. So if you can get people good and upset about trans women in sports or critical race theory in history class or whatever the fuck, these things that like I have a very clear opinion on, if you can just get us all talking about that, good or bad, no one's going to talk about the fact that they're stealing our wages, they're not giving us health care, our bridges are crumbling, our schools are failing, our hospitals in rural areas are closing. It's like, it's silly.
I think that they're like, it's so like fucked up that like the trans people in sports things, because like I don't care about sports.
Yeah.
I feel like they're actively choosing stuff that like trans people like don't care about, because it makes it really confusing.
They're putting you in a tough spot to have to be like, I should be able to swim.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't want to swim. Like, it's like,
it seems like drag queens are a representation of the ultimate rebellion against God. Society keeps rejecting God at deeper levels. First, there was marriage that we twisted so horribly, and then sexuality, and then gender. And drag is such a blatant, prideful expression of that rebellion.
Why do I always attract people with problems, people who need to be saved? That's a typical question for a person with the value being alive. People with this value have the need to feel life to the fullest all the time. Situations of emergency, saving someone or something at the very last minute, are ways to get strong emotions that allow those with the value being alive to rekindle their vitality.
We've all done it before, laughing at a joke that we actually found offensive, agreeing with an opinion that we didn't really share, and making promises that we cannot or definitely should not keep. We do it to avoid social awkwardness. We don't want to look up at the faces around us and see disappointment or discomfort, even for a second. And we know that's going to happen if we make the socially wrong choice, if we call out the joke in front of everyone, or challenge the opinion, or refuse to commit to something. And the Torah knows that too. It knows that we often just say what people want to hear. And so this week, it commands us to only speak if we're actually being genuine, to only promise if we're willing to follow through. It writes, don't break your pledge, carry out all that has crossed your lips. Because if you say what you mean, people will trust you. And after that initial momentary discomfort or disappointment, in the long run, you'll be respected as being that person helping create a world of integrity. Shabbat Shalom.
Ladies, this is what they think of us. You're delusional. The only reason a woman has any rights at all is because men allow you to have rights. If men collectively said you don't have rights, what would you do? They don't see us as people. They don't think we're deserving of autonomy. They don't think we're deserving of equal rights. They don't see us as human beings, okay? These men don't see us as human beings.
Can help them and away from deconstructing these harmful religious or trauma-based beliefs that they have about themselves. And you're confirming that the real world doesn't want them.
Gone over the 4 pillars of abuse, what creates an abusive mentality. There are also pillars in our society that reinforce and normalize abuse. These are foundational structures that protect abusers from being held accountable for their actions and normalize their abusive behavior for themselves and for their victim. And this sounds like one of the pillars, a faulty belief system. It's a moral judgment based on limited or distorted knowledge that causes other people to be oppressed. People with this faulty belief system can't see any other way and have a hard time changing their beliefs. A faulty belief system can be rooted in social norms and cultural background, i.e. a man is supposed to be head of the household and so must control all the finances, or even how they're meant to show emotion, like, oh, a man can't show emotion and the only emotion they're allowed to share is anger, and that rage is normal instead of toxic and abusive. These faulty belief systems fuel the reasoning behind the abuse and culturally normalize it. And so then it's normalized for both the abuser and the victim.
Because if you even think about opening your mouth and flapping your gums to me about how you experience ego death, I'm beating the shit out of you.
Something about that clip feels so validating to me because I made a video a few weeks back asking people what an ego death was, because I still don't know what the fuck it is. But from what I've gathered, it seems like it's just people discovering empathy and claiming it to be some hyper spiritual fucking crazy Cosmo experience. It's very much giving ayahuasca journey, where a bunch of people go into the woods and do a bunch of crazy drugs. Suddenly they discover that people have feelings, that they're not the only person amongst 8 billion. It's so hoity-toity. Ask anybody that's experienced an ego death what it is, and they're gonna say some fucking cock-a-doodle bullshit. I couldn't stitch her video. Go watch it. I tagged her.
I think we're going to see increasing numbers of parental estrangement as more and more people deconstruct their faith. And I think the reason for that is because it is incredibly difficult to maintain close, intimate relationships with evangelical Christians. How can you be close with someone who is rooting for your demise? Because that is the uncomfortable reality of what our parents want. If we have left the church, if we have walked away from God, then our parents are hoping that we encounter pain. And it's not because they don't love us. It's because they do love us, which is what makes it so incredibly messy and painful. Because here's the thing, our parents believe in hell, right? They believe a hell exists, that it is horrible, eternal torment, and that we will for sure be going there if we die not a Christian. And our parents do not want us to go to hell. They're desperate for us to come back to the faith. And the majority of them do not believe us when we tell them the reasons why we've left. Just read my comment sections on any given day and you will see Christian after Christian after Christian telling me why I'm not a Christian. And never is it what I've actually said. They do not believe it's because we don't see evidence of a God, nor do they believe that we actually have a moral problem with their God. What they believe consistently over and over is that we have left the faith because we want to sin, because we are out in the world pursuing our own selfish happiness in the world. Therefore, the only way we'll turn back to God is if we have experienced some sort of pain, if we need Him for something. Then, in that place of pain and sorrow and hitting rock bottom, they think we will pursue God. We will come back to God, which means our parents are hoping we experience pain. They're looking for it. They're praying for it, because to them it's better than hell. To our Christian parents, it's kind of like we're toddlers. God has set us down in the front yard and told us to stay put. Once our feet hit the ground, we take off down the road away from Him. We're having a fun time right now running away from dad down the sidewalk, but if we were to trip and skin our knee, we would immediately run back to dad for comfort. And in their mind, we're the toddler running away from dad right now, but meanwhile, there's a car coming, about to hit us. So they are desperate for us to trip and skin our knee so we don't get hit by the car. And even though we can understand where those fears are coming from, it is still virtually impossible to want to maintain an intimate and close relationship with people who are actively longing for your downfall. I mean, when we found out my husband had cancer, I didn't want to tell my dad because I knew that my dad would be thinking, ooh, this is the thing. This is the thing God is going to use to bring her back to him. I know that when I have something good and joyful happen in my life, that my parent is not really going to be that excited about it because every success is just bringing me farther away from God. Health theology can really become a relationship killer. I've described it before as feeling almost like we're being dehumanized. Like they stop seeing us as people and only see us as souls. I mean, there's already a tendency for Christians to devalue anything that happens in this life. They talk about life as though it is just a platform to the eternity. But that becomes even more heightened within the lives of people who are not saved. Anything here that happens to us on earth becomes useless unless it is bringing us closer to God and ultimately saving our soul. We stop mattering. Life stops mattering. Our experiences stop mattering. And this unscientific, non-existent thing of soul becomes all they care about. How do you maintain that relationship? I think for many families, intimacy ends up shutting down and people stop sharing who they really are and you become acquaintances at best. I think for many people, it just becomes too painful. Just easier to not have them in your life at all rather than know they're in your life wishing for your downfall. And I don't see an easy solution to this because the theology itself is the downfall. Hell theology ruins everything.